Well, as Egypt considers the Russian ruble, we spoke to Fadhel Kaboub, an associate professor of economics at Denison University in Washington, D.C., and we asked him how a decision to adopt the ruble could affect Egypt's foreign policy, of course, as it seeks to preserve a balance between the Western world and Russia. Take a look.
Given the volume of international transactions between Russia and Egypt, especially when it comes to tourism, and this is now the beginning of the tourism season between Egypt and Russia, that is Russian tourists going to Egypt. Given that Egypt is still struggling with its food security situation, given the conflict in the Ukraine and global food prices going through the roof, this agreement can only relieve the pressure on the Egyptian pound and strengthen the value of the pound, relatively speaking, because this is still not a major component of Egypt's international trade, but it will relieve the pressure and ease the tension on the Egyptian pound relative to the US dollar. The big question that remains is what will be the reaction of the United States, of the IMF, of the Western European countries as a follow-up to this agreement. Again, technically, Egypt is not violating any sanctions. Egypt is a sovereign nation that is doing essentially international trade that is non-military related here, non-security related. Yet, to be realistic here, we have to acknowledge that this agreement will not go unnoticed by the United States and Western Europe, and that there are other pressure points, geopolitical and economic pressure points, that may be coming to light as a reaction to this. So we'll see what the next few weeks will hold, but overall, this is a slight relief for the Egyptian economy. Well, let's be very clear about the situation that Egypt and so many other developing countries have been living under since the conflict in the Ukraine started. We're essentially seeing the first elements of a new Cold War between the US and Western Europe on the one side and Russia in particular on the other side. And Egypt is sort of caught in the middle. Egypt has economic relations with Russia in terms of exports. Egypt exports less than 2% of its total exports go to Russia. But on the import side, Egypt is relatively dependent on Russia, especially for its food security in terms of wheat imports. And Egypt, out of all of its imports, about 7% or 8% of its imports come directly from Russia. In particular, when it comes to tourism, this is a very important sector, and food security, very important sector for Egypt. So rebuilding those relationships is extremely important for the Egyptian economy, given that the global economic tension that is cornering Egypt and so many other developing countries in the last year has not been really relieved by intervention from the US directly or intervention from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. If anything, the conditionalities imposed on Egypt for financial, for the loan that Egypt is requesting from the IMF is going to be very painful for the most disadvantaged socioeconomic groups.